So for this problem, I'm going to ask you to convert a mixed number to a fraction. And the first thing that you're going to do is multiply 6 by 4, and that comes out to 24. And then you have to add 24 plus the numerator, which is 1, and you get 25. And then to complete it, you just take it over the original denominator, and you end up with 25/6. So for this one, I would ask you to reduce the fraction to lowest terms. You're always going to have to reduce it to lowest terms unless I specify otherwise. So for this one, 10/12, you would try to find a number that each side can divide into equally. So I'm going to look at number 2. So we would divide 10 by 2, and we would divide 12 by 2, and we end up with 5/6. And that would be your final answer, and it would be reduced to lowest terms. This one, I'm looking for the least common denominator. It's important that you know how to do that so that you're able to add and subtract fractions, which does come up in dosage calculation. So for this one, 1/3 and 1/7, the lowest common denominator would be 21. So we know that that's going to be the answer for the denominator. So now how do we get there? We have to multiply 3 by something to get 21, and it's going to be 7. Then you have to do the same thing to the numerator. So we would multiply the 1 by 7, and we end up with 7/21. For the other one, we would multiply the 7 by 3 to get 21, and then the 1 we have to do the same thing, and that would also be by 3. So this is your answer. The lowest common denominator is 21, and we made 2 equivalent fractions out of the original fractions. For this problem, I'm asking you to determine greater than or less than between the pairs of fractions to make a true statement. So we have 9/4 and 2. So the first thing that you have to do is turn the 2 into a fraction, which we know you would take over 1. Now you have to make sure that you have a common denominator. So we're going to keep the 4, and we're going to make a common denominator for the 2 of 4. So you have to do the same thing to both sides, and we end up with 9/4 and 4/4, which of course would be 1. And we can see if you're comparing the 9 and the 4 that that's obviously greater than. So 9/4 is going to be greater than 4/4. So for adding fractions, you have to make sure that you have a common denominator. So we're doing more of the same. In order for you to be able to complete this particular problem, we're kind of going back to further in the chapter and repeating more of what we've been doing. So we have to find a common denominator. So a common denominator for 6 and 9 would be 18. So we have to get there. We multiply the 6 by 3 to get 18, and then we have to do the same thing to the numerator. So we wind up with 15/18. 9 times 2 is 18. 7 times 2 is 14. So then we take 15 plus 14, which ends up being 29/18. And then we end up with an improper fraction, so we have to go ahead and make it a proper fraction, and we end up with 1 and I have to do my math here. 1 looks like 11/18 is our final answer. So 5/6 plus 7/9 equals 1 and 11/18. I didn't do a slide for subtraction because that's exactly the same as addition. You have to have a common denominator, and then you just subtract. I also didn't do one for multiplication because that's pretty straightforward. You multiply numerator times numerator, denominator times denominator, and you get your answer. Dividing, I'm going to go over though, because there's a little bit of a different rule. 3/8 divided by 1/2, what you have to do is flip the divisor. Okay, so we end up with 3/8 times 2, and we end up with 6/8. Now you have to reduce it though to lowest form. It's not a very good 8. So we divide the 6 by 2 and we get 3. We divide the 4 by 2 and we get a 4. So 3/4 would be your answer. So always make sure you reduce to lowest terms unless I say otherwise.